Hello, everyone, and a very good evening. You are joining the Talk for Peace panel discussion. Your moderator this evening is me. I'm Dasani Atada. So this is a panel discussion that has been organized by the Rotaract Club of Colombo East, the Rotaract Club of ACBT, the Rotaract Club of Pamanugama, and the Interact Clubs of Nalanda College and Asoka Vidyalaya. Now, the aim of this panel discussion this evening is to have a transparent and an insightful discussion on what peace really means to Sri Lanka 11 years after we stopped our civil conflict, as well as how far we as Sri Lankans have come on along this journey of peace. So before we start off by introducing our panelists this evening, we will move on to a promotional video.
Overcame all disastrous heart.
All right, so before we start off, I'd like to speak a few words and introduce our panelists. We're joined by 5 experts in this field. To start off, the first panelist is currently studying environmental science and is an undergraduate of the University of Sri Jayewardenepura and is also the founder of the Sisterhood Initiative, which opens new avenues for conversation among Muslim women and the issues they face. She is also a youth activist who has facilitated workshops on peace and reconciliation around the island and is also a representative of the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. She is Nabila Iqbal. Good evening, Nabila. And our second panelist is currently reading for her attorney at law and was also the former National Youth Model United Nations Deputy Secretary General. Further, she completed her LLB honors degree from the Staffordshire University and is also the president of the Rotaract Club of Cinnamon Gardens and is a youth activist. She is none other than Rotaractor Hanika Rahil. Good evening, Hanika. It's nice to have you this evening. Our third panelist is the co-founder of the Cosplay Cleanup Global Initiative, which is aimed at fighting against plastic pollution and is also the host and the founder of the 25th Hour podcast. Further, he was awarded with the Iron Services Environmental Sustainability Award this year for impacting the sustainability space in Victoria, Australia. He is also a content creator, content strategist, TEDx speaker, and a podcaster, currently pursuing a master's in commerce, majoring in marketing at RMIT in Melbourne. He's also an ambassador for Mental Health Foundation in Australia. So good evening, Sharon. Nice to have you this evening. Our next panelist is the founder of Sri Lanka Smile, a project initiated by Danu Inasitambi Foundation and WTF, and is also the head of Channel High TV. He was elected as the brand ambassador of 444 as well, and is currently holding the chairman post of the PR and Media Committee Sri Lanka for the Asia African Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He holds an honorary doctorate and a paramount medallion rather in World Peace and Diplomacy Organization and was awarded the title of Global Peace Ambassador by the WPDO in recognition of his undying commitment towards sustaining world peace and harmony, as well as he is also currently functioning as a member of the National Committee of Sri Lanka Unites. He is none other than Mr. Danu Inasitambi. Good evening, Danu. Nice to have you.
Good evening.
Yes, our final panelist is well known for his activism and contribution towards peace and reconciliation, and is currently an entrepreneur, youth icon, social activist, and motivational speaker. He was appointed as a brand ambassador for Sri Lanka Unites, Childcare Lanka, and Airtel Mobitel Internet, as well as he was awarded the title of World Peace Ambassador while the World Peace and Diplomacy Organization. He has also taken the initiative of producing and launching Beats of One Nation Sri Lanka, which is Sri Lanka's first multi-ethnic pop album in collaboration with the American Center and Sri Lanka Unites in contributing towards sustaining the world peace and harmony. Good evening, Randhir Ritana. Nice to have you as well. So we will start off with Danu Inasitambi. So today we celebrate 11 years since we put an end to the civil war here in Sri Lanka. But is that really all that needs to be done? Is stopping a war in itself enough in regaining peace? And how have we come along in this road to recovery, or rather road in gaining peace here in Sri Lanka? I know you yourself have been in the crossfire, I would say, of the civil war as a youth and as a teen yourself. So if you could maybe tell us your experience and your key takeaways as an individual who actually experienced this from both ends.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here. Just wanted to actually phrase it off your own statement there. The act of war is what is over. And the act of war is an act that has destroyed a lot of things. But the word called peace and that statement or that mentality is far from coming into act, because a 30-year war cannot end and peace to grow in like 30 minutes. It's years of betrayal, years of brutality, years of pain, years of tears. So all of this has to calm itself down. There should be a lot of reconciliation, rebuilding work. There should be grassroots level education reform for this act called war to never come back, because we have stopped the war, but we have not created peace, in my opinion. As someone who was born into the war and someone who lived during the war and who was in midst of it, something that I learned is the fact that war is not something you and I want. You and I want peace, but we become the puppets or the workers of somebody else's desire and dream. If we are smart enough, we will make sure that we stop ourselves of being fooled and roped into something called this thing called war, which destroyed 30 years of our country. So I feel that it's time that we remember, yes, ending the war is the first step, but building peace is a step that we need to take every day.
Right, absolutely. So you are also a peace ambassador, Danu. Now we hear a lot of talk about being an ambassador, and I think a lot of us are sort of confused with the real role of what they actually champion for. So what does it really mean to be a peace ambassador, especially in Sri Lanka, 11 years after we stopped this act of war in Sri Lanka?
Okay, so the role called peace ambassador, it's not that you need to run with a civilian outfit and fight for the country. It doesn't need to be that you need to do work that is going to bring the whole country together.
Right.
The act of peace could start from your neighborhood, from your environment, from your city, your town, that moves into your country. For me, peace comes from knowing the fact that the people who we have contact with, who we can touch, see, hear, should be happy in a place where they can live and in a situation where they can grow. If I try to change the world, I might just not achieve my target.
Right.
So it's better for me to work in the areas that I can and change that. Because if I do it, 7 other people do it. That means we have done at least good work for 700 people. So I feel that peace ambassador is to start a chain reaction. I was awarded this title or this recognition for my project called Sri Lanka Smiles. And all what we do out of that is to connect 2 dots with somebody who is in need of something that could change their life for something greater. It could be education, it could be skill development, it could be even illness that is stopping them from achieving something. We find resources who have the disposable income, who are willing to support organizations that have funding, but they have no trusted organizations to go ahead and give it. Okay, fine. So we connect the 2 dots, and from there, the chain reaction begins. My first project of a boy who was in the very rural areas of passing Kochukade, all what he wanted was a laptop. Today, he works in Dubai with a salary of 250,000. In my opinion, I'm so proud to know that he and his family changed the curve of their life.
Right.
So that is what you call peace, because he does not need to face the consequences of this third world country or a developing country that we're living in. He can develop his life. He has taken a step to grow. And that happens when you take the initiative to see what around you, whether they are all in a place where they can live and grow.
Right.
That's my understanding.
Also, Danu, something that I was wanting to ask you is that you are somebody who can speak trilingually, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's a gift in this country, the ability to connect with everybody. I think there is also a huge issue in Sri Lanka where we cannot communicate as much as we want or as much as we think we can, which has also sparked this whole issue of, misunderstanding and misinterpreting one another. And I think that also reached new levels, especially during this conflict. So how has your personal experience in being able to communicate to all forms of ethnicities in Sri Lanka been in building this role of peace? And are people really the one and the same when it comes to this topic of peace when you've gone out to the field to talk to all of these people? And what are the main issues that you saw when it came to this topic of peace in all walks of life, maybe?
The initial reason why I communicated in my third language, my second language, Sinhalese, is the reason being the people who I worked with, associated with on an everyday level, didn't speak my language, which was Tamil.
Right.
So, which crippled me. And English is not everyone's first language or anyone's first language, which makes it harder. And expecting somebody to speak flawless English is just stupidity. We learn in our mother tongue. So English is always going to be a second language. So, but I force myself to, I still cannot read or write, but I can talk and understand every single word. So one of the reasons why I did that is because I wanted to be someone who communicated the right thing. See, sometimes our arguments, that's why they say whenever you want to confront somebody, don't text them. Because you can interpret a text the way you want to. You can say, oh, hey, how are you? Or, hey, how are you? It's how you read it, how your mind is working. So if you don't understand what another person is trying to tell you, you're just going to say, oo kotiek, oo singelek, oo muslimekek. Whereas all what they might have told you is, hey, how are you? Or like, can I help you? Or would you be able to help me out in this? Something that I understood, this is something that I've actually said many times. We humans have a mob mentality. We humans, the very thing that separates from animals and humans is the same thing that we are not allowing ourselves to be separated by. We want to be animals in one thing. If you do take a lion that's hunting down, let's say a deer, the minute one lion attacks this deer, 2 other lions on the side were like, there is a wounded deer, jump on him. Another, jump. So eventually all the lions congregate and eat that deer. After those lions go, when they're too full, some other creature, which is less like a hyena, will walk there and eat the rest. That's what we are made of. If you do take all the war, any riots, bullying, any type of issues that have happened, is because, okay, I go ahead and say, "U demelek utagapang." I might be just somebody who is standing next door who has nothing against this Tamil person. I'm like, මෙයා ගන්නකොට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැද්ද? එන මමත් ගන්න. ඌමනාවක් තියනවද ගන්න? නැහැ.
It's like a chain reaction, basically.
Of course, it's like that mob mentality. Oh, if he's doing it, why can't I do it? Oh, so that is correct. So you also know that when you do it as a mob, it's not a crime. How many people are you going to arrest? So it's an ethnic problem. So but if I individually go and kill somebody, it's a murder. But 83 riots, who do you arrest? Who do you say as a murderer? Everyone had their share in it. People who lived next to each other ended up going against each other. For what? Just because somebody said, 40 gini dibba. Gini. So when was the burnt? Was there a problem with all these years living next to them? No. So I always feel the thing that separates us from animals, we somehow say, no, we will just be like them. It's easier for us.
Right.
So that's the problem.
So any final messages you want to give away to everybody watching?
I will say this is our time. We have suffered the 30 years. Beyond the 30 years, Sri Lanka has taken triple beating. We have had the war, we have had the tsunami, we have had the 83 riots, we have had the bomb, now we have COVID-19. We have had too many troubles. We really need to take this into our system, that together we can go higher.
Right.
The minute, even when COVID was becoming an ethnic problem, I understood we really need a lot of help. When there's a global issue, you can't make it a national issue.
Yes.
We are fighting against the infection, not fighting against each other for the infection.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I would like to say.
Thank you so much. If any of the other panelists want to add in to anything that Dano said, I think they can. They have about 2 minutes, or are they all okay with the areas covered?
I just like to add, I would say, I love the mentality where be kind to your neighbor and look after your neighbor. I also believe if you're kind and compassionate towards yourself, you in turn will be kind and compassionate to others as well. And like you said, yes, a mob mentality is very, very viral in a sense, but we can also create a mentality where we work together as well. And the more people that join a cause that works together, the masses will join as well, because they see more people talking towards it. So I just want to add that. But Danu, that was brilliant, man.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Danu. Now, our next panelist is Sharon. I'm glad you picked up on that, Sharon, because my main area of focus for you is obviously mental health. Yes, I think the most visible form of injury was something that we saw to our own eyes through this 36-year-long conflict. Things that we saw injured people, we saw dead people, we saw buildings collapse, we saw a lot of damage to the eye, but a lot of things that went on with our emotions, with our mentalities, the way we felt was ignored. And I think to a certain extent, even after the war, topics such as trauma or things concerning empathy and emotion has sort of not really been spoken to the level that we sort of want it to be taken up on. So Sharon, since you are somebody who champions for mental health, I would like to know your sort of opinion regarding all of this.
What would you do if you broke a bone? You'd go to the hospital and you'd get it sorted. What would you do if you go through anxiety, panic attack, PTSD, loss of a family member? What would you do then? It's the same thing. We have made it highly biological that if you're sick, that means that it's only something like you have a cold, a flu. Right now it's COVID-19, or you have diabetes, or whatever it is. But mental health is also something that affects you. It has affected all of us. It can be sadness, it can be fear, it can be judgment, it can be insecurity, it can be so many things. It's just that we've made it this completely taboo topic that we shouldn't talk about, because we as kids growing up, we get used to this term thrown around saying, oh, you're crazy, you should go to Angoda. Those little lines that are thrown around, we don't realize the impact that it makes and the mindset that it makes to a lot of kids who have grown up, because every time we see someone talking about trauma or something they've gone through in their lives, it's just like, oh, you're crazy. It's a direct link, right? And like Danu said, this comes down to education. But just like the war, the bombings, all of those things, we had immense loss of life on all sides. But on top of that, we still have families that are grieving. We still have families that have sleepless nights and have night sweats because they can't sleep without their family members in their room. I was watching a video today of this lady who was affected by the war. She's a Jaffna woman, and she had to sell her jewelry because she couldn't. She had to sell all her belongings because she couldn't afford food. It's their stories that we don't talk about, and it's the trauma that they go through the years that we don't talk about, because mental health is such a taboo topic. And it's just that people should just get over loss and get over depression and get over sadness. So I truly believe that it shouldn't just like you would treat an illness or you would treat your physical body, you should take care of your mental health as well.
Right. Also, Sharon, something that was added onto your scope as well, the Easter attacks that occurred last year, as well as the Christchurch shootings. Now, these were all all topics of acts of terror, rather, that centered around a lot of mental health issues as well, especially when it came to the Christchurch incident. So
Yep.
what can you maybe tell us about that, how, terrorism and mental health at a point might even be linked or is a correlative of each other?
It's the after effects again. I believe that, for example, when the Easter attacks happened, there were so many losses, there was so much going on in the world. But so for me, from my personal experience, I felt like I had to do something. So I organized a silent rally in Melbourne that had a lot of Sri Lankans and also Australians and different people coming through. But I got contacted by Tamil extremists, and mind you, I'm a Tamil as well. Tamil extremists saying you're carrying the Sri Lankan flag, and that means you're not supportive of Tamils. So we as a culture have all of these, as you can see, Danu's reaction, that was my reaction as well. We have all of these people who are ignorant. It's ignorance, right? Who are just ignorant to the fact that there is so much of bad in the world. Why do we need to add more to it? We can choose to add good in the world, and we can choose to change the narrative into something more positive and something more supportive towards our Sri Lankan culture and what we stand for. Why do we have to go back and be like, oh no, there was so much of there was travesties that happened, in the war, in the Easter attacks. There's so much of there's different sides to it, right? But what I believe is we're all human. We all breathe the same air. We bleed the same blood. The only thing that separates us is race, religion, sexual orientation, gender, right? But when it comes to mental health, from an Easter attack perspective, it's answering the same question. It's the post-traumatic distress. I remember when I was having the rally and I almost broke down because there was this lady who came up to me and whispered to my ear saying, I lost my aunt and my nephew, my aunt and my cousin to the Easter attacks. Thank you so much for having this. And she just came there. She couldn't bear waiting there because it just affected her so much. And she said that she's going for therapy to deal with these issues of loss. So there are so many people who are going through things. We just choose not to see it. We just choose to join a mob, like Danu put it. We just choose not to be on the better side of the story and just use our knowledge and our intellect and our education to make more factual decisions. Nobody wants to critically think anymore. Everyone wants to just join the bandwagon. So I think all of us have a responsibility towards educating the people who don't have the information and sometimes don't have access to that information. Why is mental health important? Why is emotional intelligence important? Why is empathy and compassion important? We have the power to, we are privileged. All of us right now, we all have a laptop and a phone in front of us. It's our duty to spread that message. it's our duty to step up and spread any positive message we possibly can and use social media for good. Like Danu started Smile Sri Lanka, and he's an entertainer, and his laugh is extremely contagious that it makes me laugh, and it's like a positive impact. Randir does music, and he spreads his love through that. Hanika and Nabila, they're speakers for different issues within Sri Lanka. So we all have the potential to make change, every single one of us. And you don't have to be a social media personality. I believe that even if you're a normal person, you have a responsibility to make an impact in your friend circle and your family circle as well. That's how we begin to change things.
Right. Thank you so much, Sharon. If other panelists need to add in something to whatever that was covered, you all can. You'll have 2 minutes. Oh, I am good.
Add in, peoples. Come on.
Do we have other perspectives? Anything y'all want to add in? Y'all can. I guess we'll be
Could I
moving
just add
on.
like a small point?
Yeah, sure.
I've been getting a lot of hate recently on a lot of like mental health related stuff, but like I would just like to say, don't fight fire with fire. That's what they want. They want the attention. Treat hate with compassion, because it's coming from a place of insecurity and ignorance and not intellect. So how we move forward as a species and as humanity is we treat hate with compassion. Don't give them the energy that they don't deserve. So yeah, so I'd just like to put that out there as well.
Right, no worries. Thanks, Sharon. So I will be moving on to our next panelist, that is Nabila Iqbal. Good evening, Nabila. So I know that you, yes, hi. I know that you have championed for a lot of change in terms of women's rights and advocacy in Sri Lanka, and especially when it comes to your social media platforms. I myself have found it very informative of the things that you do on your platform. So would you mind telling us that as a volunteer in several peace organizations, what do you really think the role is in conserving peace, especially at the present setting in Sri Lanka?
Okay, so I think I belong to this generation that did not witness the beginning of the war, right? So only the end, right. And that also, like, I'm from close to Colombo. I have a very privileged background. But I think what really changed for me was when I was in school, I was 14 years old, and we were sort of just sent on this volunteering experience to Kilinochchi, and we had to meet war widows, and that was sort of my first eye-opening experience to people with different realities as opposed to mine, right?
Right.
Today, if we just focus on today for Remembrance Day, I had a phone call with one of my friends, Tushan. He's from Jaffna. He's currently working here in Colombo, and I was asking him, Tushan, how do we go about this day? Like, how do we phrase it? What do we call it? And he told me, Nabila, just make today about a personal reflection, like what does this day mean to you and others who don't have the same realities or lives as you, right? Like, it's also a really good time for us to check our social media and look at the people who we always engage with, who are in our circles. Are we always talking to people who have the same lives as us? And if it is, then it's time for us to change and speak to different people and understand how their realities have sort of formed their personalities and their lives. I did this tour for Sri Lanka Unites when I was 18 with this dream team, and we had to travel every province for peace and reconciliation workshops and assemblies. And there was this moment where I was sitting with my mentor, and she told me something. She said, Nabila, when we look at our communities, we have Muslim communities, we have the Sinhalese communities. None of these groups of people are homogeneous, right? Every community is so different and have different sort of traditions and cultures, even though we are sort of the same. And she told me, it's time we start having intra-faith discussions. That means
Absolutely.
we come from a specific faith, but we speak to each other also about all of our differences and sort of understand why we want to live differently, or why we have so much of differences, and sort of learn the beauty of that. And I'll share this with you also. When we were in school, we did this exchange program with prefects. We got Urutirapuram from Kilinochi, some prefects, and we posted them at our houses. And my friend Prasadini, she lost her father at a really young age, and the girl from Kilinochi was Manga. Her name was Manga, and she was looking at the family portrait of Prasadini's house, and she said, "You don't have a father. Like, I can't see your dad in the photograph." And Prasadini said, "Yeah, I lost my dad at a very young age." And then Manga also said, "I lost my dad at a young age too." These are two girls who don't speak the same language, have never had the same life experience or anything, but they were able to sort of find some actually awkward common ground and sort of make a connection. I think these specific moments in my volunteering journey has sort of helped me understand what youth can actually do about peace or how we can move forward, right? So I think the first step is mainly to volunteer and get out of our comfort zones, to see different lives, but do it in the right way, not for like a personal gain or like a personal feel good moment, but actually to sort of understand how other people lead their lives. And that's really important, that exposure. And the second one is we need to get better at having difficult conversations. It's easy to have a conversation with someone you can agree with. It's not an effort at all, right? The third thing is we need to get better at including different people and representing them in the work that we do. For example, we can have translations at events. We can make sure we have covered every sort of representation in ethnicity or religion. The fourth one is this is not really for us, but for people older than us. We have to include young people in decision-making positions, because when you do that, then you remove them from causing harm or engaging in other sort of activities. The fifth thing is a little maybe controversial, but we have to learn from history. We need to learn that history is also biased, right? Someone once told me, like, imagine if journalism is bad. When we read different newspapers, if the newspapers have different stories covered in different ways, imagine how bad history is, right? We're reading an incident, but it could be altered in so many different ways. And the last thing is, I think we need to understand that we have to heal as a country. This is not a moment for us to, oh, let's get over it and move on. It's a time to actually self-reflect and get together and heal. I just want to end with what my friend Tushan said for today. He said, we always believe that our country, we need a good leader, a strong leader, but actually we need a good healer. Like, that's what our country needs at the moment. And as a young person, I think we will be moving into decision-making places or places of influence in the future. And I think that's one mentality that we should have.
Right. Also, Nabila, I have another question for you as well. Since you advocate a lot on women's rights and equality and so on, I think women who face the war and widows and people who are distressed and also who've lost a lot of their loved ones following the war, I think that is a topic that a lot of people sort of tend to not talk about. And I think that's something that you sort of have a lot of expertise on. And if you mind telling us about their aspects and how women who face the war, how their journeys have been post conflict, and what more needs to be done, especially for women who have faced this war.
So my connection to the work with gender is mostly from the Girl Guides Association, but that is, I work mostly with young girls, so this might not be my area of expertise, but I can just share a few facts of information with you.
Right.
So like I mentioned before also, like I think just seeing how women in Kilinochi were managing when I was at a young age, I think three words were just, they're very resilient. They, even though they're struggling, they're independent, and they have a real amazing, strong caliber in them. I mean, I don't know how else to phrase it. But, when we look at crisis reports that were published right after the Civil War, you can clearly say that in this transitional justice, a lot of those policies, women are not really included in it. So in the conversation for peace, women need to be more included. For example, in the consultations task force on the national reconciliation policies and things like that. Also, in any war, there will always be a lot of sexual violence, and in this as well, there were women who were affected. There were forced recruitments by the LTTE. There were also lots of credible allegations of women who were at rehabilitation centers after the war, also who had made lots of allegations, and also women not making allegations because the trauma that they suffered during the war was so much that they didn't want to relive it again in a court or by reporting it to the police. Also, when the war ended, you had women coming back, and now they are all of a sudden the head of the household, or they are they're running their own homes. So, and also we can't forget that Sri Lanka is a very patriarchal country also. So we expect a man to lead the household, but you have women sort of changing that and struggling with that as well. There were lots of Muslim women who were Muslim families that were displaced in the war, about 70,000, and the I mean, if you've been reading up on a lot of gender-based violence statistics, it's really difficult for a Muslim woman to get a divorce. So, especially during the war, the courts were not actually functioning. There might be just one Qazi court judge walking up to the north. So, women who wanted to get a divorce because they're being abused in their own homes couldn't get those. So, it's not really a one community suffering, it's everyone suffered, and also having to send a loved one to the war and then not coming back and then having to live with that grief. Also last year, there was no mourning that was allowed in the northern province for the 10th year anniversary in Mulivaika, and these are women who've lost their loved ones and they want to mourn just to help them. Like Sharon was saying, mental health is very important, and mourning is something that helps you get through that grief. Is you need to get over. But yeah, so when you look at conflict affected women, I mean, they come from all communities, and it's really disappointing to see the statistics and information. But maybe one positive thing that has come out of this is it has sort of encouraged and empowered women to run grassroots change in their own areas. So they're so hurt, they're so traumatized that they don't want this to happen again, and they want to create some sort of change in their communities. Maybe I'll just end with that.
Okay, thank you very much, Nabila. Yes, that was actually very insightful, especially on the area of women in conflict. If all of our other panelists want to add into that, they have about 1.5 minutes at least. So I take that as a good, and we will move into a short commercial break, and we will be back. Welcome back. So we are now with our fourth panelist this evening, that is Hanika Rahil. Hanika, my question rather to you is that today we are celebrating a little over a decade of ending the civil war in Sri Lanka. But however, in the present context, not only in Sri Lanka, this whole concept of terrorism has sort of shape-shifted into this idea of extremism and radicalization. So terrorism and radicalization in itself are sort of the biggest threats for world peace in national security, for world peace and rather national security. So the whole world rather sort of mourned and grieved with Sri Lanka when we went through the horrific April 21st terror attacks last year. However, the flip side of this story is that Sri Lanka always tends to give religious and racial interpretations to tragic situations rather than focusing on the constitutional and a political end of this story. So what is your opinion on this whole situation where terrorism has sort of now taken this face of, let's say, extremism and radicalization, which is something that we saw with the April 21st attacks last year?
Good evening, everyone. Today we are having an interesting evening with a lot of amazing thoughts being put across and said. I'm a Muslim, an ardent believer of peace, love for a faith which brings me solace. Let's get this straight, right? So Islam, 1,400-year-old global religion, followed by 1.6 billion people in every corner of the world, quarter of humanity, of all sorts of background, culture, ethnicity, right? So yet they find a reason to generalize. If people want to generalize, let's say Shahram, Easter attack bomber, was motivated by Islam, let's assume for the sake of argument that Islam is a religion of war and terror, and it is responsible for all of this for the sake of argument. Why aren't all of us doing it? Why is it a tiny minority of Muslims interpreting their religion in a way of terrorism, war, and a warrior religion? Let's assume there are 16,000 suicide bombers in the world for the sake of argument. That is 0.00% of the Muslim population globally. What about the other 99.9%? Is everyone being ignorant to this fact? At least the rest of us aren't blowing up ourselves tonight. Do you really think that 1.6 billion believers of Islam are promoters of hate, religion of violence? Do you really think so? I will probably leave it up to your imagination. I believe there are only two group of people. The first being the peaceful, law-abiding Muslims of Islam from Asia, the UK, the Africa, the US, etc., who see Islam as some sort of identity, spiritual fulfillment, hope, solace. And then there are the haters who wants to classify the civilization, who wants to divide them in the name of religion as ours and theirs. I urge you all to never fuel the argument and legitimize their hate. Finally, I would like to put that trust those Muslims who you know right now. You might be knowing a lot of friends of yours who are Muslims, who you have met, who you hear, who doesn't believe in violence, who do want you to believe in peaceful message of Islam. And they believe in Quran is taught to the majority of Muslims as a religion of peace, compassion, and mercy. The Islam of Quran, not of Al-Qaeda or not of extremists. Let me conclude with my favorite quote by Martin Luther King. We must learn to live as brothers and sisters or perish together as fools.
Well, thank you for that, Hanika. If any of our panelists want to add in to this, they can. I guess everything's good. All right, so I will move on to our final panelist and his discussion. Now, Ranveer, you have been somebody, yes, hi, good evening. So you've been somebody who has sort of been everyone's sort of form of entertainment, even during the war was going on. You know, music and sport, I personally believe, is something that people of all races, ethnicities, regardless of where they come from or their social background, it's something that we can connect with each other so easily. And you are somebody who has been in this entertainment industry when the conflict was going on as well as now. So what sort of challenges did you face as an entertainer, as an artist, in sort of spreading this message of peace, especially during crucial times when a war was going? And what sort of comfort did you think that you had the opportunity in giving to people?
Well, during conflict times, well, see, here's the thing. It's just that when it comes to entertainment in general, one of the things that's immediately affected by any kind of say economic, political, social, or technological disaster, it's the first thing to get affected is basically entertainment. So during the period of this sort of 30-year civil conflict, obviously entertainment took a big hit. I was mostly overseas, just to clarify, I was mostly overseas for university during the peak of the war, right, towards the last stages of it. And when I returned, within about 2 to 3 years, the war pretty much concluded. So if you kind of go back in history and you look at it, if you remember if you guys have seen the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, and if you remember the closing scene where Freddie Mercury gets on stage and he sings to a huge audience. So that was the early 80s, and that was a concert called Live Aid, which was organized to basically bring aid to the African continent, all right? Music and the arts since long ago have always pretty much come to the rescue when it comes to situations like this, when it comes to resolving conflict, solving any kind of global crisis. The arts, and like you said, sports has always been there to kind of, soften the blow. In terms of music, what you'd find is that regardless of anyone's sort of biases when it comes to your ethnic background, your political view, your sexual orientation, whatever have you, there's so many bases to have, bias on these days. Everyone's taste in music is very eclectic. So for example, you can have anti-Islamic sentiment, but you'll still shamelessly eat Arabic food. You'll eat kebabs and possibly listen to Arabic music as well. You know what I mean? So it's a bit ironic, really. So music is pretty much, I think, a very strong unifying force, because people unconsciously, they buy into it. They buy into melody, they buy into lyrics, and sometimes even if you don't understand the words of a song, you still buy into the musical arrangement. Psychologically, you buy into the music, the frequencies, and the melody. Okay, so in that sense, there, it's like I said earlier, it's quite a unifying force. And if you actually go online right now, if you go on YouTube and so on and so forth, you'll find that there's a lot of musical platforms that are unifying people from different backgrounds. So the earliest example was Live Aid. And if you go online now, you find platforms like Playing for Change, which basically is doing some fantastic work out there. So it's kind of, getting people from across the globe to participate, to collaborate on works of music and so on. And it has an underlying message. It's just that, we are more alike than we are different. Okay. So yeah, to answer your question. You might want to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Yes, so I also want to know about your journey of producing and launching Beats of One Nation, which is also Sri Lanka's first, I think, multi-ethnic pop album based on peace and reconciliation in partnership with the Sri Lanka Unites and the American Center. So what was that experience like, and how was the response?
All right, so my whole experience with this little domain of peace and reconciliation that started with Sri Lanka Unites close upon a decade ago.
Right.
So through Sri Lanka Unites and through Prashant and his team, I've pretty much learned a lot about this area, okay, about conflict resolution and so on. What the problem I think that Danu also touched on at the very start was that, you know, if you take Sri Lanka, it's one thing to be a post-war nation, all right? So in a post-war nation, all that has happened is two sides, or how many sides were in conflict, they've pretty much put down their weapons and been like, and they're like, okay, fine, we're not fighting anymore, we're good.
Right.
Moving from that to a post-conflict nation, all right, is basically, okay, fine, there's peace, you put your weapons down, but your differences and your grievances have been reconciled. So we haven't really moved to that yet, as is pretty evident, you know, if you look back at history. The whole concept behind Beats of One Nation was to kind of like I said earlier, just reinforce the fact that music unifies everybody, okay? So another thing I discovered through Sri Lanka Unites was they used to have this yearly sort of youth engagement called the Future Leaders Conference. And what was very unique about that was it basically got all the movers and shakers, all the high achievers from across the country, from all the, you know, four corners of the country into one place. And they had like this week-long youth camp.
Okay.
And it's amazing, right? Because you'd get people from, say, the north. You get a kid from the north who's never had a Sinhalese speaking friend in his life.
Yes.
Then you'd get a kid from, say, the deep south, from like Matara, Hambantota, that area, who's never met a Tamil speaking person. Okay. And so these bunch of kids would all gather together and they'd, you know, go through their workshops and their training and so on. And on the very first day, you'd notice that there's a lot of reservations, right? Everyone's very suspicious of the other person. But throughout the whole Future Leaders Conference, that whole journey they take, when they come to the final day, they're all best friends, all right? And when it comes to saying goodbye, these guys are all in tears, okay? So it just goes to show, I mean, like, we're actually, you know, more alike than we're different. And at the same time, okay, all these prejudices that we have at the moment, I learned a very interesting catchphrase from Sri Lanka Unites. A lot of these preconceived notions about, you know, various races, various minorities, ethnic groups, whatever, these are things that we inherit. We inherit that from the previous generation.
Right.
Parents even, right? Inherited prejudices. So things like that, the present generation has to be reprogrammed. They have to unlearn all these prejudices and be taught again. So coming back to Beats of One Nation, through Beats of One Nation, what we did was we did the musical version of the Future Leaders Conference with lesser people.
Right.
We ran auditions online and basically said, we told people, listen, if you guys are kind of familiar with the topic of peace and peace building and so on, and you want to be part of an interesting project, post a clip of you singing a song related to peace. So we kept on emphasizing the whole peace aspect here because we just didn't want this to be another online talent show. We wanted to engage musicians who actually had a passion for this particular subject area. Right. So ran the auditions, did everything, got people from the various districts, from the various provinces, and got them into a studio and got them working. So as usual, you can imagine all the complications there. You've got a kid from Jaffna who doesn't speak Sinhalese, all right? And you've got a kid from down south who doesn't speak any Tamil, all right?
Right.
And now we expect these guys to all collaborate and make music. Oh, good times, all right? But what you'd find is, as soon as they got in the studio, all right, you didn't really need a common tongue. I mean, they struggled and, you know, used hand signs and whatever the hell. They struggled their way through this entire process with a lot of coaching and a lot of help. So I have to actually give a few shout outs here as well. So Ken Lappin Studios, Ken Lappin, his wife Julie, Rudy Christiansen, and the whole team, Eshan and the entire team that worked on Beats of One Nation, Prashant Advisor, Farhat, the whole support crew from Sri Lanka Unites, all these people, they worked tirelessly to kind of make this come together, okay? The US Embassy as well. So eventually this all culminated with a launch concert at the Punchi Theatre, right? And it was, that launch concert was very symbolic, because as soon as we saw these guys on stage singing together, singing this entire repertoire that they had created of about 6 to 8 songs, I mean, that was, for me personally, that was my seal of approval. That was my proof of concept. Okay, this is done. All right, this concept has proven true. If you guys can make it work, if you can make it work on a song, if you can make it work on a record, you can make it work in real life. Okay,
Right.
So that was pretty much the story of Beats of One Nation. Before I conclude, just a couple of things, just to take about everybody else's book. It comes down to education. Okay, it comes down to education. It comes down to equipping the youth or the next generation with number one, some lessons in history. Okay, where everything kind of turned to shit. I mean, basically, when we nationalized the language of the education system here, all right, and what happened was we isolated a few people as well. Okay, we created minorities. This system has created minorities. Okay, if you look at a country like Singapore, all right, take that as a model. That is something we should work towards. There we've got so many different ethnic groups, but they all live together in perfect harmony, and that country is thriving. Okay, what we have done is we have pretty much created a melting pot of conflict here. That's what we've done. Okay, so the system has to change, number one. Okay, people need to be educated and be given the right reasoning skills when it comes to sort of diversity and so on. Politicians, they use this, they exploit this stuff for their own personal advantage. Okay, and it's pretty evident. All right. So obviously education, people need to be equipped with the right history lessons, with the right reasoning skills. Okay, and they need to unlearn all these prejudices that they've been brought up with. Number one, they need to get a fresh perspective on everything. All right, it's all good and well to be patriotic, to be Sri Lankan and so on, but the moment one particular ethnic group, all right, starts to feel overly nationalistic and starts to feel that just because they're the majority, that they have this sense of entitlement over everybody else, that's where everything collapses. That's where all the conflict starts. Right? So it's all good and well to love your religion, to love your ethnicity, but if you turn that love into a weapon, right? When you turn that into a weapon, දේශප්‍රේමී වෙන එකයි හරිද තමන්ගේ ආගමයි කියන එක ඒක ආයුධයක් කරගත්තාම එතන ඒක ප්‍රශ්නයක්, ඒක ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක්. හරිද? So using that as a statement of diversity and turning that into a weapon are two totally different things. So our youth have to be educated about that. What I'm seeing right now as a musician, and especially in arts, right, especially in popular culture at the moment, I'm seeing a trend that can be very dangerously exploited. Okay, there's a sort of a very nationalistic trend at the moment amongst our youth. All right, I'm not going to name ethnic groups. Okay, but basically there's a very nationalistic trend. Right now it's a fashion statement, but it can also be very quickly turned into a war cry. It can be turned into a war cry. It can be turned into a battle cry as well, if the right nerves are pinched. All right, so decode what I said the way you will. Okay, but I think you know what I'm talking about. So
absolutely,
that's basically it.
Well, thank you so much for that very insightful discussion, Randir. So I think we're done with the basic 5 discussions. And I think our key takeaways again was that there still needs to be quite a lot of work done in terms of understanding each other when it comes to this whole topic of peace. So we can move on to our question and answer session, which will be taken over by Amavi Banagoda. Amavi, are you with us?
Hi, Dasani. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
That's,
So before we actually take the questions, I
Yeah.
want sort of all the panelists to maybe tell us one thing that really needs to be done, or one thing that really needs to change.
Yeah.
Let's see, for the foreseeable future at least. Now we are 11 years down post-conflict, but something that you personally believe that needs to change sort of immediately if we are to achieve this a level of peace that all of us really aspire to have in this country. I'll start with Danu.
I think it's very simple. I think we need to, we all try and thrive for equal opportunities in the world. I think if we can all see all of us as Sri Lankans, I think that's the most easiest thing. I think representing the Jaffna Tamil community here, I would like to say that there are still people who have asked me, what caste are you from? Which shocks me, and we are in 2020. I worked at TNL Radio for 6 years. I was head of Light 87. And there was a sales executive who asked me, oh, you're Jaffna Tamil. What's your caste? I've never been so angry. I shut the door and I opened it again and said, I'm sure I belong to a better caste than you because you asked that question and I didn't. And she is Jaffna Tamil as well. And this is 2017. And that shocks me. So how far are we? We cannot blame our grandparents. I think we also part to be blamed in it.
Right. Well, thank you for that, Danu. Sharon, if you want to add something.
Yeah, sure. I would like to say a comment that I got recently where I said Assalamu alaikum on a live chat one day. And I got a comment saying, hey, aren't you Tamil? Shouldn't you say Vanakkam? Why are you speaking another language? Every single person is trying to build barriers. Every single person is trying to build us apart. But just like everyone in this group chat has said, we are all human. There is no barrier unless we put one there. And there's no barrier unless we create one. So I would just like to say just 3 things. Education, education, education. Just like Randir said, he said it so well, I can't add more to it, but if we change the mindset of our youth and if we try to change our own mindsets, we can bring about a lot of change in Sri Lanka. And we can take that change around the world as well. And like he said, Singapore, for example, Singapore looked at us as an example. And now we're looking at Singapore as an example. So it's all about perspective here. So we have the potential to make change happen. We just have to action it.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Sharon. Nabila, if you want to add something else.
I think just getting out of our comfort zones, meeting people who lead different lives to us, and having difficult conversations. I think I would definitely encourage that.
Right. Thank you. And Hanika?
Yeah, so I would completely agree with Dan, right? Because I came to Sri Lanka like 4 years back from Republic, but I am a Sri Lankan, so my family is still based there. One of the nicest things I see is when you go to a public transport place, when you're standing there, I used to go to school, so I would stand there for my school bus, and everybody who comes to that stand, they don't know who you are, what religion you belong to. They'd be like, bonjour, bonsoir. So that's the Creole version of the French, right? So they would just like greet you. That's so much love. I mean, every single person. But when I came to Sri Lanka, so I don't, recently, when I mingle with a lot of friends, so they get like really shocked. So I didn't know that you were a Muslim, right? So it's like you have to look a certain way to, for them to agree on their thoughts. So I would say spreading love, and secondly, to provide equal opportunities to youth and putting them in a decision-making process so that, their thoughts are also taken into consideration.
Right. Thank you, Hanika. And finally, Randir, if you want to add something as well.
Yeah. So last I checked, we have a government ministry. I can't recall what it's called, but it's pretty much supposed to oversee, multicultural affairs and integration and all that good stuff. So ministries like that need to step up. Okay, we celebrate Vesak, we celebrate Christmas, we celebrate multiple poyas, we celebrate a lot of religious holidays. There's not one festival or any initiative that celebrates diversity in this country. Now, other countries, Australia, New Zealand, Western countries, they do that. All right. So I lived in New Zealand for the longest time. They have a separate food festival for the Asian community. They have a separate festival that celebrates the Pacific Island community. Okay. Why can't this country do that? Why can't we do that? All right. So, I mean, things like this need to be thought out. I mean, we're spending money on various things. Right? These things don't cost money. Just give it over to the private sector, give it a little bit of funding. Okay. That's a cute dog. All right. So
I'm sorry, he wanted to be on screen.
Such an attention seeker. All right. So give it to the private sector, provide funding. Okay. But get people conversing. Start the conversation about diversity. Start a conversation about this multicultural country we're in. All right. Start a conversation about that. We are not talking about this. All right. We're doing everything but talking about this. So the government needs to step up. We don't need the help of multiple NGOs here to fund this stuff. Okay, if the government can do it. So there you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Unfortunately, I have to leave this discussion right now. It was an absolute pleasure talking to all of you. And I think, yes, my final message too on a day like this is that a lot of us, we grew up during a war, but we were very young when the war ended. So I think we saw a lot of what happened during the war through our parents' eyes. But now that we are old enough to do a little bit more research, a little bit more understanding ourselves, I feel like today should be a day where we should, like Nabila rightfully pointed out, where we should reflect and think of the lives lost in general. Think of all the Sri Lankans. I highlight on that word Sri Lankans, the lives lost of all Sri Lankans through that tragedy that we encountered, our parents encountered, and to sort of understand where we really went wrong, what really happened. Where did this whole concept of peace disintegrate for 3 decades? So I think that is my key takeaway as well. It was an absolute pleasure. I hope all of you all found it comfortable with me moderating for the past hour or so. I will hand it.
You were really good. Very well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so
did
much,
amazing.
Banwal.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So I will hand it over to Amavi for the questions. All right. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye.
Dasani.
Bye.
Actually, first starting off, Dasani has done an amazing job moderating the session so far. I have so much to live up to. So please be easy on me, guys. Okay, so we are moving on to the questions segment of the discussion. Our first question is, we have someone asking, how will peace among cultures will help to bring the country back after COVID-19 pandemic? So, yes. Is anyone gonna take that question up? Danu?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, if you don't mind, would you repeat the question again? Because I have a problem happening in this room right now, and I'm just trying to be civil here and also try to tolerate this pest that I have behind me, my dog.
It's okay. He can completely come on the live stream. We won't mind. We will. Okay. So the question is, how will peace among cultures help to bring the country back after COVID-19 pandemic?
I think, as Ramdev said, something that was spectacular with the fact that we don't have something to celebrate Sri Lanka. Yeah. We have so many things. I think what's so sad is the fact that tourism in our country promotes the beautiful beaches, the elephants walking and the peacocks dancing and all of these. But if you do take the foreigners who come down, they photograph the most authentic Sri Lankan thing, from the Isowade to the people on the road to somebody plucking like Aralia flower. That is what represents Sri Lanka. We are people who love to eat, we love to drink, we like to party, we like to, celebrate the most smallest thing in a big way. We come from a country that celebrates everything. We have the burger community that will eat a meal, a 3-course meal, even if there's a funeral. And like we have the Muslim communities, when they break fast, they're feeding the whole environment. Like I have a sawan coming today for me. When it's Christmas, we go poor just to make that cake. And a thali is good enough to eat by 7 people. So we have so many communities in our country. And I think, why can't we celebrate the communities as one country without celebrating Independence Day? We're celebrating independence from the British, but we are trapped ourselves in our own mess. Who is to celebrate that? I think we should celebrate that. I think after this COVID-19, staying at home would have made us all frustrated enough to understand we rather be together and fight an invisible bacteria or a virus than be separate, just fight people who are creating problems.
Yes, thank you so much, Danu. Does anyone else have anything to add on to that? Nabila?
I think in general, just like Danu mentioned at the beginning, we are all fighting this virus together. You know, we can't be all divided and fighting the virus individually, and especially like, you know, it's microscopic. Honestly, just from like a general standpoint, right after COVID, you know, the country will have to regain its economy. There are so many other things that will have to come back into place. Just through common sense, I guess it will be so much easier for us to get there faster if we were all together, as opposed to fighting other conflicts and other riots that would be happening and things like that. Yeah.
Sharon, do you have anything to add on to this?
Yeah, I think like you
Yeah.
guys said, I think these guys have covered it really well. Like we've battled together a virus, and we've connected with people. We've spoken to our families and friends more than we have ever before, I feel like, for most people, I feel like. And we just need to continue that, and we just need to pay it forward. Paying it forward is the most important thing. If we can do it to our friends and family, why don't we do it to a stranger? And just build that community up. And I think the more we work aligned, in towards one specific goal, the more that we can work towards achieving something. So yeah.
Okay, I'm really sorry, guys, if you feel like I'm just picking out, you know, randomly. I honestly, it's kind of hard to focus a question when it's so many
You have to
amazing
also
panelists.
read the questions. Yeah, I understand.
Yes, it's so many amazing panelists. I honestly don't know who to give the question to. So if you have anything, just type at the end of the
so just
question.
one statement, one statement, and we'll probably move to the next question. So
Yes.
just to sum it all up, the coronavirus doesn't care if you're Sinhalese or if you're Muslim, if you're Burger, or if you're, you know, it really doesn't. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: maintaining peace between cultures, it will help the recovery process. Okay.
Okay.
And if you don't maintain peace, very simple, it'll just make things much, much worse. So you choose. I think it's a no-brainer. Okay.
I think that was a very strong sentiment. It's amazing that you brought it up. So moving on to our next question. This is basically a little bit following up on what you said. Can religion play a positive role in peace building? I feel like Hanika, could you take this question?
Yes. What is actually religion? So when you talk about religion, I believe it is an identity for those who believe in it, right? So it's a spiritual fulfillment, a hope, a solace. So in my personal view, that any region does not promote, any religion does not promote conflict or violence. Whatever the violence being carried out in the name of religion is persons or groups radicalized ideas. So in such situations, all the religions in our community at large should take a leading role in countering these radicalized ideologies within the communities, and also religions should respect the importance of other and exist cohesively. As people of faith, they should respect others' faith as well. To do this, there should be a greater understanding of the other individual religions, and also probably they should accommodate to other religions who seek regarding their religion. Currently, even though we have organizations who are willing to create coexistence among religions, it is only limited to a certain crowd of all religions. The idea should go on to the grassroots level and identify the problems the religious community faces. And even the grievances they have due to the assumption of another religion. Any religion in the world doesn't promote harm to others. We have gone wrong as a humanity is due to the misinterpretation of religions, I believe.
Yes, I think that was amazing. Does anyone have anything to say to follow up on that? I honestly don't want to be a bully and just pick people. So please volunteer.
No, I think you stick to a question to a person. I think that way you'll be able to cover more questions.
Yeah. I'll do that. So we have 2 more questions. The question is, do you think the measures Sri Lanka has taken for reconciliation are adequate? And I think
no. Sorry.
Go ahead. Please take the stage.
I'm sure this, of course, a lot of people will add to it. I'm sorry, I have to say it. No. Because even if you do take politics, right now the general election is happening. There are so many people who have spoken to me, not because I am of any value to anyone. It's just that we can reach out to people and we have platforms that we can talk, and they want to know what I can talk through me. Of course, all what they've said is, I really want to target the Christian Catholic community. I really want to target the Muslim community, the Muslim Tamil community, not the Muslim single. I'm like, how in the world? Next thing they'll know, they'll separate you under who eats chicken, mutton, beef, potato, vegetables. They'll separate you under everything. I think our leaders, some who are 70 plus, have really forgotten the root of understanding reconciliation. Our ones have really thrived on us being peaceful. Every time they go, they just talk saying one thing: don't give those ones a chance. You all have to vote and get us in so that we can rule. So why? I think they have always enjoyed it. So they are not the right ambassadors. I think our right ambassadors are us. We.
Definitely.
We have to change their mind. They are not in any position to change us. There may be 1 or 2, but they never get highlighted.
That's a flaw in our system.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure the rest of you want to add on to this statement. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think leading by example, right? Even Randir, look at what he said. He's been in New Zealand all his life, and look at what New Zealand's Prime Minister has done. What did she do? She practiced empathy. She practiced emotional intelligence. She practically looked at everything. She realistically looked at the stats and figures, but she practiced a lot of empathy and emotional intelligence, something that our politicians lack. And I'm open to say that I have nothing to lose. And I think that we have to really look inwards. And like Danu rightfully said, all of us, every single one of us, we don't have to be politicians. We have voices. We can raise them if we want to make a positive impact. So,
yes.
Let me just add to that as well. Okay, very blunt.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, very blunt statement. But look, okay, the politics of power that thrives on division, it doesn't thrive on unity ever. Okay, so if you're ever in the present world going to sit back and look at your government to kind of unify people, no. All right, especially in a third world country like this, okay, the kind of corruption we have. There are the odd exceptions, like Jacinta from the Prime Minister of New Zealand. All right, so she had the intelligence, the emotional intelligence to do something as decent as the Muslim community in New Zealand is minute. All right, but as a show of solidarity, for her to cover her head, for her to dress as appropriate, as the Islamic faith says, women should dress. For her to do that for at least even a couple of hours to show solidarity, that shows character, that shows true leadership. Okay, the politics of power, it thrives on division. It thrives on division. So what incentive is there for a government or for a politician to create unity? Right? So it's like this, man. Look. Okay, we can fuss and moan till the cows come home about governments not getting involved, but the point of the matter is it's very difficult because there's not enough incentive until the voters call for it. There's really no incentive. Okay, right? Especially in a country like this, when you have a majority, such a huge majority, all right, okay, you play to the gallery, right? If you're a politician, you play to the gallery. So again, I'm not going to say too much. Decode what I said the way you will, but yeah, there you go.
Yes, thank you so much. So actually that leads up to our next question. It's kind of connected. It's basically what can we as the general public do to foster peaceful living being communities, among communities? So Hanita, would you mind taking that question?
Do you mind repeating that question?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Am I too fast?
No.
Okay, so what can we as the general public do to foster peaceful living being communities,
So
among
I
communities?
believe when you call public, sometimes foster peace or create peace, it starts within our homes, right? So because everything starts with your family, because rather than going out and, talking first, it's better to create a positive and peaceful environment within your family so that when you go out there and connect with other people, you sort of pass on the lessons learned. So probably by creating a space for dialogues within the community, like from different ethnicity, culture, and spiritual values. So because due to limited dialogue between the religious communities, the place reflect within or upon their communities doesn't get lost. So for example, what we are doing today is amazing and it's a great example because so when you engage good decision makers, probably it doesn't have to be religious based, right? It can be like NGOs, it can be even youth, because I believe youth are not the leaders of tomorrow, but they're the leaders of today. So you can find youth who is passionate about it, introduce the subject and value rights and responsibilities to them, and they can probably take it forward. Or even like from teachers, educators and school children within the formal and non-formal system. For example, Sunday schools, right? They engage youth in discussion on dignity, equality, tolerance. So these are certain things like you can take forward, and mostly you have to feel make everybody feel inclusive, and accommodation should be given to everyone, uh, regardless of their religious practices or values or culture they come from. For example, when you organize an, let's say we have me coming from a Rotaract background, like we have like a every day, right? Because Rotary International is a vast organization. But when you organize something, there will be pure vegetarians. A simple example, right? So who are believers of certain community. You have to accommodate that, keeping in mind. And for example, to avoid clashing the worshipping times of Buddhists on Wednesday. So you have to be mindful of these little things, Sunday prayers of Christians and Friday prayers of Muslims. So these are the little things you can focus on, because rather than jumping on bigger decisions, I think it should start with smaller baby steps. Thank you.
So with that, we actually wrap up the question and answer portion of the segment because we have time constraints. We have to end the session at 8 o'clock. So it's actually time for my conclusion. I mean, I listened to the entire conversation and it was amazing, the points that were brought up by all of the speakers. And thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for coming onto one platform and speaking about issues that we really need to, considering that it is actually the anniversary of the ending of the civil war. So moving on, this is my 2 cents. So I actually had to Google, just to get my facts right, I Googled the Sri Lanka Civil War. And what came up was on my right-hand side, I had the location and from which date to which date it was. And in the end, it just said Sri Lankan government victory. And for me, I personally, it's just how I felt, but I was personally affected as my father is in the forces. So I don't know, just seeing the word victory, the question is, when it comes to war, is there really a winner? there's so much of loss. There's so much of loss of life, loss of infrastructure, so much of loss that, I felt like the word victory is, it's just not right, I'm pretty sure the viewers who are watching this, at least you saw some portion of the war, at least the ending. If not, you saw the April 21st attacks. You saw what it did to our country. People were living in fear. People were scared to go out traveling. People were scared to get into one place. It was just so much of violence, so much of fear. There is no winner when it comes to war. And when it comes to the whole, personally, whenever someone is kind of mildly racist, the question I ask is, you should be thankful that Sri Lanka has so many communities. You have so many public holidays thanks to that. Thanks to that. You have Christmas, you have Poya days, you have everything thanks to, this cultural acharu. If at all, you should not be saying, I'm proud to be a Buddhist, I'm proud to be a Sinhala Buddhist, I'm proud to be a Sinhala Catholic, I'm proud to be a Tamil. You should be saying, I'm proud to be Sri Lankan. Because Sri Lanka is beautiful. We are beautiful. We are culturally mixed. It's just so beautiful. And that's my conclusion. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Danu. Thank you, Nabila, Hanika, Sharon, and Randir for coming together and putting together this awesome discussion.
Thank you.
I'm honestly very honored to be part of it. And thank you, Dasani, for moderating the biggest half of the conversation. With that, I actually have to thank our sponsors today, which is the Chocolate Magazine. We have Confetti, we have Sri Lanka Unites, and we have Plexus Lab. Thank you so much for sponsoring us. Thank you so much for making this a reality. And most of all, I have to thank the committee that was behind this. I feel like I'm talking too fast. I actually have to thank the committee behind this. So this is an initiative launched by the Rotaract Club of Colombo East in collaboration with the Rotaract Club of ACBT, Pamanugama, and the Interact Clubs of Ashoka Vidyalaya and Nalanda College. Thank you so much, guys. So much hard work was put into this, and it really paid off. I'm pretty sure it paid off. So any final words, guys? I feel like I talked.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Be kind to one another, or my mother will come and knock some sense into you.
Okay, it was an amazing session. Thank you so much for joining. And yes, be safe, stay safe. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys.
Bye.